Lecture 4, Society of 17th Century Taiwan. By the time Qing Empire took control of Taiwan in 1684, Taiwan had been colonized by the Dutch for 38 years and by Ming Zheng Kingdom for 22 years. In the courses of regime shifting, indigenous peoples in Taiwan had been embroiled in two large-scale wars, throwing them into battlefields of global trade conflicts and Chinese political struggles. By the late 17th century, the Qing Empire had been the most powerful regime that had controlled Taiwan. Being governed by then Qing, an empire to itself assimilated to Han culture, the indigenous peoples in Taiwan had to be unavoidably assimilated to Han culture as well. How did it feel, then, to be an indigenous person during the assimilation? That's one of the topics we're now going to explore. We've mentioned in previous lectures that in the early 17th century, Han Chinese people came to Taiwan mainly for business and only stayed for a very short time. By the early 17th century, the number of Han Chinese people who had come to Taiwan was around 1,500. Later on, the number of Han settlers under Dutch rule rose up to approximately 30,000. In the period of Ming Zheng, the number was believed to be over 200,000. The number of Han settlers didn't keep rising though, because the Qing government didn't allow. Once having taken over Taiwan, the Qing government decided to send all former soldiers of the Ming Zheng Kingdom back to the mainland. Moreover, they forced most of the Han settlers to return to their ancestral home in Fujian and Guangdong. The government even issued a ban on sailing across the strait, prohibiting migration to Taiwan from the mainland. In the early years of Qing's rule, only colonial officials and a fixed number of soldiers were allowed to cross the strait. All of these facts have shown an inactiveness in the nature of the Qing's governing. In short, the Qing's rule was nothing more than the continuation of what had already been started by the Ming Zheng Kingdom. We can now see what the Qing's rule was like and the social circumstances under it by studying two critical texts: Taiwan Prefecture Gazetteer, edited by Gao Gongqian in later 17th century, and Yu Yonghe's Small Sea Travel Diaries. To estimate the size of the territory which the Qing Empire had a firm control of, it would be misleading to solely look at the size of the Qing's regional administrations. The three regional administrative divisions set up by Qing, Taiwan County, Zhulo County, and Fengshan County, had covered virtually the whole western part of Taiwan, while in reality, its reign had never reached that far. The purported territorial coverage of the three counties started from Shamajito, now Maobito, Pingdong, in the south, to Jilongcheng, now Heping Island, Jilong, in the north. But it was just on the map. Based on Small Sea Travel Diaries, we can tell that even by the time when the Qing had controlled Taiwan for 15 years, Qing's reign was limited to Tainan City and its nearby area. The fact that Zhulo County and Fengshan County had their administration centers and schools established in Taiwan County instead of their own territory further shows Qing government had a difficult time ruling most parts of the two counties. Taiwan Prefecture Gazetteer further shows the inactive nature of the Qing's governing. We learned from the book that by 1683, the Qing government had controlled over 46 tribes in Taiwan, 12 of them from Fengshan County and 34 of them Zhulo County. 14 years after that, in 1697, the number increased by only 6, all of them from Zhulo County and none from Fengshan County. As to the number of households, in 1683, there were 12,727 Han Chinese households, with a population of 16,820. 14 years after that, in 1696, the number of Han households had not changed, and the population rose up by just 953, or 5.7%, to 17,773. It should be noted that the demographic numbers shown above were surveyed by the Qing government for the purpose of tax collection, with only male citizens counted. However, The fact that the numbers didn't increase much clearly shows that the sea-ban policy was strictly held. The number of indigenous households, on the other hand, was not clear. What we do know for sure is that there were 52 tribes taken over from the Ming Zheng Kingdom. Among them, 8 tribes in Fengshan County, whose members make their living by farming. We now know that the 8 farming tribes had 3,592 members of both sexes because they were registered farmers. But we have no idea how big the population of the rest 48 tribes was, because they were managed by tribal leaseholders, not the government itself. We also learned about the bureaucratic system under the Qing's rule from Small Sea Travel Diaries and Taiwan Prefecture Gazetteer. There were 3 main officers subordinate to Taiwan Prefecture, a magistrate, a coastal defense and piracy prevention Tongzi, and a Jingli. Under Taiwan County, there were still 3 main officers, a county magistrate, a xiancheng, and a dianshi. Fengshan County also had a county magistrate and a dianshi, but no xiancheng. And so did Zhuluo County. All the officers mentioned above were regional executives. As for defense forces, there was a general military official ranked as regional commander that took charge of all armed forces in Taiwan. It would not be overstated to say the man was in fact the highest-ranking leader in Taiwan. He had 10,000 soldiers at his command and many military officials subordinate to him. Regarding the fact that there were only 16,000 or 17,000 civilians in Taiwan, the number of military men was huge, making the government of Taiwan in early Qing period obviously a military government. Historians then came to a conclusion that it was the top priority of the Qing government to make sure there was no disobedience possible. To support their points, historians have found further evidence on Taiwan Aboriginal map from the period of later Qing Emperor. The images of military camps and military men preventing floods you see on the map also show the existence of exceedingly strong military forces. So how did it feel to be a Han Chinese in that period? By studying Small Sea Travel Diaries, we learned that most Han Chinese people used to live within the boundary of Taiwan County, because the area was the only place garrisoned by Qing Army. We can see images of garrisons on the Taiwan Aboriginal map. By studying the map, we also learned that there were dense buildings and a well-planned street network in Taiwan County, now Tainan City. We can also see some Han-styled houses in southern part of Fengshan County on the map. But once we cross Danshui River, now Gaoping River, and get to the 8 indigenous tribes region on the map, we can only see thatch houses built by the indigenous people. By studying Yu Yonghe's Small Sea Travel Diaries, on the other hand, we can take a look at what a costumer was able to purchase in Taiwan County. According to Yu's accounts, we learned that one could buy cloth, oil, and sugar from markets, because that was exactly what he had bought during his 2-month stay. He had also hired local artisans to make woks, knives, axes, hoes, dippers, barrels of different sizes, balances, rulers, buckets, and storage tanks for him. He also bought daily necessities like brown rice, pickled food, chopsticks, and containers like baskets, cast pots, and bowls from local markets, suggesting an abundant supply for goods and services. Yu also noted that the street network in Tainan looked just like a smaller version of the one in Beijing. In the hustle and bustle of Tainan City, transportation and goods of various kinds were all easily accessible. Small Sea Travel Diaries and Taiwan Aboriginal Map had also told us about how it was like to be an indigenous person in that period. We learned that the 8 tribes in southern Fengshan County were the first tribes to farm in the Han Chinese way. In northern Zhuluo County, we can still see 4 tribes that were also affected by Han culture. In fact, those 4 tribes had long been affected by foreign politics and cultures. On Taiwan Aboriginal map, there are images of Han-styled houses in the area of the 4 tribes, showing a sign of wide assimilation to Han culture. The fact that Yu Yonghe felt comfortable in the 4 area where the tribes resided also suggests the same thing. In Small Sea Travel Diaries, Yu noted that they had trees in their yards and kept their living areas tidy and clean, making the place no less comfortable than a village in the mainland. Based on Taiwan Aboriginal map, however, historians believe the Qing government had a rather weak control of the regions north of the area of the 4 tribes. You will see fewer and fewer hand-styled houses if you keep going north on the map. Yu noted in his book that there were 208 tribes controlled by Zhulo County, while there were only 40 recorded in Taiwan Prefecture Gazetteer. No matter which text was more accurate than the other, we can be sure that most part of Zhulo County would still be extremely foreign to a Han Chinese person like Yu, who was really shocked by the indigenous culture where people had their bodies all tattooed, ear helixes stretched to the size of bowls, and stayed perfectly comfortable when being naked in public. By studying Taiwan Prefecture Gazetteer, Small Sea Travel Diaries, and Taiwan Aboriginal Map, we have outlined the history of Taiwan during the 17th century. Having been ruled by the Dutch, Ming Zheng, and Qing, Taiwanese people had been going through drastic changes in political and social areas, with people of different nationalities joining in. In the 18th century, the speed of change began even faster, mainly because the Han Chinese kept going north and trying to settle. In 1723, with the expanding influence of Han people, the Qing government opened up 2 new regional divisions, Zhanghua County and Danshui-Ting, to better rule the new settlers. After this, they even lifted the ban against migration. A huge number of Han Chinese people then came across the strait with their family and settled down in Taiwan. Eventually, the Plains indigenous peoples in western Taiwan were all assimilated to Han culture. In this lecture and previous ones, we have traveled through historical Taiwan from the Age of Discovery to the Qing's rule by studying historical documents. 2 of the documents were written by the Han Chinese, that being Small Sea Travel Diaries and East Aborigine Story. Both of them were of much help in understanding the politics, ethnic groups, and social circumstances of Taiwan in the period between mid-16th century to 17th century. To understand the period after the Qing Empire took control of Taiwan, on the other hand, we have relied on officially compiled local history documents like Taiwan Prefecture Gazetteer to look at Taiwan from the perspective of the Qing Empire. In addition, many of the Qing officers who had come to Taiwan kept records on what they had observed and experienced, in the form of writings or drawings. All these are precious documents to help us better understand historical Taiwan. In the following units, we are going to study the geography and human activities by studying 2 documents closely. One will be Taiwan Aboriginal Map from the 17th century, and the other Liu Shiqi's 2 panorama prints of Taiwan from the mid-18th century.